Have you ever gone to a networking event and you start talking to some people, right? And you'll meet this one person that they're talking and they're just kind of like a chatterbox. And you're 5 minutes into the conversation, then you just realize they've explained everything about what they do, maybe a short story about what's going on in their life, but you haven't shared anything about yourself other than your name. In fact, sometimes you haven't even gotten that far. So what I like to do is, I'll say, that's interesting. Well, since networking works both ways, it'd be rude for me not to tell you what I do. Hi, my name is Elijah. I'm a video editor, and then share some things about yourself. So, this is Elijah from Social Dynamics. Hopefully your day is going pretty well. We got another Flashback Friday where I'm going to be sharing a video I actually did on my Side Hustler Society channel, but after some consideration, I've decided to move it here on this channel. I'll talk about 5 social skills that you need to develop when you go to networking events to build influence, to develop connections, and of course to network. I think this video belongs here on this channel more so than the Side Hustler Society. But you might hear me reference the Side Hustler Society in the video because that's the channel that was originally on. With that being said, let's go ahead and hop into the video. Don't forget to give the video a thumbs up if you found value. Leave a comment on what you found most valuable. And of course, don't forget to subscribe if you're new. Let's get into it. Networking is important now more than ever before. Whether you need to meet contacts or people to expand your network to do more business, or expand your dating options, or just to make friends, it's important you know the skill of networking and how to meet people. That's why in this video, I'm going to be sharing with you 5 tips on how you can do just that. And stick around to the end of the video because I'll be giving a special bonus tip that's very critical to follow if you want to turn people that you meet at, let's say, networking events to some kind of connection in the future. So let's get started. What's up, y'all? My name is Elijah Bilel. I'm the founder of the Side Hustler Society, and part of being a full-time hustler is the ability to network. So you can't live on this thing called a MacBook or computer every day and all day and expect to really make it very far financially. Eventually, if you want to be very full-rounded, you'll want to have some networking skills. This video is kind of a response to some feedback I got recently at my birthday bash, where I asked people what do they feel my superpower is, and about 75% of everyone there told me it was being a connector or networking.
One thing about Elijah, if you're into like growing yourself, growing your business, his superpower is networking.
I think it's all about your way of communicating, connecting with people. You're all about connection.
And then when you listen, you find a way to connect with that person and, like he said, offer solution resources.
My superpower is your ability to network and get people together. I'm going to say what I'm sure everyone has said. First word was connect.
I think your superpower is really being able to be a connector for people.
We combine that with the fact that I started the Veggie Outers, which is a plant-based brand that helps people switch to a plant-based diet while we go reviewing restaurants on a scale of 1 to 10. It's fair to say that I know a thing or two when it comes to networking and making connections. That's why I'll be sharing with you these 5 tips on how to maximize your networking efforts. Starting off with tip number 1, I like to call this tip, share your story. This is vital for people who are just getting started networking and haven't really found their flow when it comes to talking to someone. And I'll just come out and say it, but if you're introverted, this will do you wonders. Have you ever gone to a networking event and you start talking to some people, right? And you'll meet this one person that they're talking and they're just kind of like a chatterbox. And you're 5 minutes into the conversation, then you just realize they've explained everything about what they do, maybe a short story about what's going on in their life, but you haven't shared anything about yourself other than your name. In fact, sometimes you haven't even gotten that far. What's going on is you bumped into someone that just likes to talk a lot. And the biggest thing people love to talk about is themselves most of the time. Now, that doesn't mean that they're a bad person, but a lot of times they don't realize they're doing it. And this interaction can actually end with them dumping all this information on you, but then it'll be time for them to move on to the next person. They give you their business card, and then they move on to the next person. Well, did that really serve you in any way? I mean, yeah, you might be able to use their service, but they don't know anything about you, what you may provide, what service or products you have, and you just didn't get to share anything. I'm glad to tell you that there's a way to get around this without coming off in some kind of rude way. Because imagine if they're just spilling their guts out and you just say, hey, you've been talking too much. Like, let me tell you about myself. That comes off as rude even though you could say that they were rude first because they kept talking. But we don't want to be rude back to them. So what I like to do is, if I'm in 2 or 3 minutes into a conversation and I haven't shared what I do, or at the very minimum my name, I'll wait until that conversation or that point that they shared just ended, and I'll say, that's interesting. Well, since networking works both ways, it'd be rude for me not to tell you what I do. Hi, my name is Elijah. I'm a video editor, and then share some things about yourself. That's kind of you acknowledging the fact that, hey, you've been overdoing it. Let me engage in the conversation too. And at that point, they're usually a little more mindful to let you talk too. That way you can exchange your information and share what you do, because there might be something that y'all can benefit each other with, or they may need your service or know someone that needs your service, but they'll never know if you don't get a chance to tell them. So use that little hack to make sure that everyone you come into contact with at these events knows what you do. And speaking of events, that leads us into tip number 2, which is to actually not drink at these events. This is a pretty common thing where people will go to some kind of networking event or meetup, and there may be alcohol there that's available, so they'll have a drink or two just to kind of relax and get into the flow and be less inhibited. I'm gonna be honest, you need to find other ways to become less inhibited, which if y'all want me to make a video about that, I can do so, but I'm just saying that's a habit you don't want to develop. But taking that out of the equation for a sec, if you have alcohol at these events, it can actually inhibit your results with networking. To illustrate this, I'm going to give y'all an example of something that happened to me just yesterday at a networking event. I was at a Chamber of Commerce meetup, and they give their normal announcements, all that, and then at the end of the meetup, they allow you to do some networking. As I was talking to people, I was walking to the other side of the room, and this older woman approached me. Now, in events like this, it's usually very loud because a bunch of people are talking, so you have to raise your voice to be able to talk to the person in front of you. But when you raise your voice like that, that means that more air is coming out of your body, which means the person in front of you is going to smell your breath, versus if we're having a normal conversation, that probably won't happen unless they're close enough to kiss you pretty much. But since you got to raise your voice, yeah, all that air is coming out of your body. And I could tell that she had a few drinks, so the air that was coming out of her body didn't smell too good.
That was until he went all gaga for some cheap little whore that he met up in Living World. So he comes back and dumps me like I'm yesterday's garbage. Got any clue how insulting that is? Jeez, you smell like booze!
So as she was talking, she got closer. I actually physically took a step back, but I had to catch myself like, oh, that might be too rude, so I didn't keep stepping back. But she went on and said something about her being something in the travel industry, and she handed me a business card, but I didn't really engage with her because my first instinct was to get out the conversation. So I kept my answers short, like, oh yes, or no, or that's interesting, instead of actually having the full conversation. The whole interaction lasted about maybe a minute, and then she moved on to the next person. I didn't hear anything that caught my attention because I didn't want to engage with her. So am I really going to give her a call? Probably not. And that stemmed from me not wanting to interact with her because her breath stank. That's why I say don't drink alcohol at these events, because it may be doing you harm and you may not even know it. At the very least, if you're going to do so, you need to have a breath mint or something to reset your breath so that this doesn't happen to you, because these networking events tend to get very loud, so you have to raise your voice to talk to people. If you're enjoying this video so far, don't forget to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe if you're new, as I'll be dropping more videos about networking and connecting, because that's what y'all told me that y'all would like to receive more of from a content perspective. Tip number 3 is to actually use the person's name in the conversation once you find out what their name is. And to be honest, a lot of people, it's pretty crazy, but they don't actually find out each other's names, and they may actually build up all this rapport during the conversation. Then it could be awkward later to ask them their name when you kind of felt like you know them. So one of the first few things you want to do is introduce yourself and ask what the other person's name is, so you have their name. But the thing is, if you don't use their name enough in the conversation, there's a chance you're not going to remember it. Now, we're taking this context a little outside of the business arena, because if you don't remember someone's name, they'll usually hand you a business card or they have a virtual card. So, but you'll remember their name, or you'll know their name for reference because you'll have something that you can use. But let's say if you're in a scenario where you're just at a normal meetup where it's not business themed or it's date themed, a business card might not be your means of remembering someone. So you need to make an effort to memorize their name. Well, if you're meeting like 30 people at one event, some are going to slip through the cracks, right? And then we see the person again. A lot of people like to use this excuse like, oh, I'm horrible with names.
What?
You don't ever want to say that publicly, but you also don't want to admit that to yourself, because that's admitting that you're socially inadequate. People who have social skills remember people's names because they have techniques to make sure that they remember their names. So if you've been saying that, I want you to write that on a sheet of paper, ball it up, and throw it in the trash, because that's trash thinking. You need to make an effort to remember people's names. Otherwise, they're not going to remember you, and you don't deserve to be remembered if you're not making an effort to remember them. The way I get around this is I make sure to use a person's name 5 to 10 times in the conversation in a very organic way. Now, I would give an example of this right here, but I actually shared an example of this on the Side Hustler Society podcast when I was reviewing VidSummit with a panel of guests that I met at the event. So let's play that footage of me sharing what I do in these situations there.
If you're heavy networking, it's going to happen eventually. You're going to forget someone's name. Yeah. I do have something to help me with that. I make it a habit to use the person's name as much as possible during our first interaction in an organic way. So a conversation, naturally carries on, right? And then when it comes up, when you ask them a question, just use their name before you ask the question. So Malcolm, such and such. So Jenny, such and such. And once you've used it 5 to 10 times, that's usually when it clicks in your head. Okay, I've attached a face to the name, so as long as I see you, the name's gonna pop up.
Yeah. So I want to add to that. That's an excellent strategy. The other part of that is don't continue to say I'm bad with names, because you're just manifesting something on yourself that is not true. You're great with names. You're bad with recall. And the way to help you with recall is to continue to use that person's name.
Right on, G-Wiz. You're not bad with names, you're bad with recall, and there's some things we can do to improve your recall when it comes to remembering people's names. Tip number 4, make sure you stay after the event. Why is this the case? Because if you really want to get some networking going, you should know the people that are throwing these events, because when they get something new popping off, or their friends get something new popping off, you'll be one of the first people to know about it. See, if you hang around after the event, what happens is most people have gone home, and it starts to get down to the initial networking crew that puts these events together. And you want to be able to slide up in that crew, but the easiest way to do that is actually to stay after hours. Because most likely, you probably won't talk to the host of the event during the event, or if you do, you have very limited interaction because they're having to interact with everyone. And if they're not interacting with everyone, they're focused on running the event. Once the event is kind of ended, there's usually a crew that hangs out like 30 minutes to an hour afterwards, and these are usually people that have helped with the organizing of the event. So you get to talk to them, and you also get to talk to the host, and that's usually the only real time you can have an engaging conversation with the host, because the event's over, so they can actually interact with you more, and they actually are respecting the fact that you're hanging out after the event, doing some networking. As a bonus here, if they're, putting tables away or, doing whatever they need to do to wind down the event, I would also help with that, because if you're just standing there while they're going ahead and, moving things away, that's going to be awkward and it's going to look selfish. So go ahead and join in with the disassembling of the event itself. But you'll find that you'll learn a lot about the host, a lot about that initial crew. And once you do this about 2 or 3 times within that same type of event, like let's say it's a monthly event, what happens is you start to get invited to things that normal people wouldn't be invited to, or you'll get the heads up on events that are coming up ahead of time. That's beautiful information to know, right? And like I said, people who throw events tend to know other event planners or people who are throwing similar events in the same niche. Take it from someone who has their own meetup group, the Veggie Outers. I know plenty of people who have their own vegan meetup groups too. You can get access to this information and more if you just make an effort to stay maybe 30 minutes to an hour after the event so you can interact with the people that are hanging around. Who knows, you may also find people that you can go to events with, and you can start a little running crew instead of having to network by yourself all the time. That leads us to our last tip, tip number 5. And I feel like I should not say this, but I'm going to go ahead and say it. Make sure you dress to impress. Whatever the theme of that event is, and you can usually tell because the event has pictures of people on social media, dress to fit that theme. So if it's business themed, you don't want to show up in an outfit that's not appropriate. If you're uncertain what the theme is, I have several outfits that are very universally themed. Like a polo shirt with dress pants and dress shoes, that's pretty, I'll say, malleable to whatever event you go to, whether that event is casual or business themed. That's something that can fit in. But like I said, you should be looking at the pictures that are released on social media that will show you what kind of dressing people are doing, and just go ahead and mimic that. That covers the 5 networking tips for this video. Don't forget to like the video if you found value in it, and subscribe if you're new. Now, we covered some tips on how to improve your networking results, but let's say you actually don't know how to talk to people in the first place. Well, that could be a problem, right? Luckily, I did a whole podcast on how to improve your social skills and what to say and do when you approach people on the Side Hustle Society podcast. So you want to check that out next if talking to people has been an issue for you. And even if you're good at talking to people, that podcast has a lot of good game to enhance what you're already doing. This has been Elijah with the Side Hustle Society, and I'll see you over there on the podcast channel.